will be enabled in this Zoom call, so feel free to send through your questions and we'll address them towards the end of the discussion, but please just populate that chat at any time. Also pointing out to students on the call that the session is being recorded. Firstly, our acknowledgement of country. The University of Melbourne acknowledges the traditional owners of the unceded land on which we work, learn and live, the Wurundjeri, Woiwurrung, Burrung, Yorta Yorta and Dja Dja Wurrung peoples. We pay our respect to the elders past, present and future and acknowledge the importance of Indigenous culture in the Academy. And now to introduce you to our guest today. Welcome to Priya Bukte, who is a landscape architect with Plan E, based in Perth. We also hope to have Liam Lowe on the call. Liam was a little bit delayed, but hopefully Liam's on the call now. We'll check in a minute. Liam is an architect and he's going to have to help me with the pronunciation, but Shaherdenba, I believe. We're super grateful to Liam and Priya for offering to share their experience today and also for being passionate supporters of current students through the Ask Alumni program. Again, more information at the end of our discussion on the Ask Alumni program, but you'll certainly leave today understanding how to ask Priya, Liam, and many other graduates career-related questions through our online networking platform. So stay tuned for that. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and give our guests a spotlight. So can I just get an indication from Imogen? Do we have Liam on the call? I can't see Liam's.
Unfortunately, we don't have Liam, so
Okay.
We'll keep going with Priya at the moment.
Okay, so to make, you may, just a message for all students, you may actually want to just make Priya and myself highlighted on your, what's the technical term for that? Anyway, we'll get going. Okay, there we go. Okay. So Priya, you are a landscape architect. I can't wait to hear about your time at university and how you transitioned to start your first graduate role. So tell us a little bit about that.
So yeah, I started off in university in 2020, which was the COVID era. My master's was for like 3 years long. 2 years out of that was online and 1 year was on campus. Throughout my master's, I ensured I was well connected with my peers by joining into clubs that are associated with specific interests. So I was a part of Solar Committee, which is Students of Landscape Architecture. And I'd say that was one definite area where I connected with a lot of my peers, which also helped me develop connections into, I'd say, into job opportunities. So as I graduated, before graduating, I had seen a variety of opportunities pop up on the internet asking for graduate roles, and that's where I started applying for my role. Initially, I started off working at Urban Edge Landscape Architects, which is in Melbourne, and I worked there for about 3 months before shifting over, coming to Perth for my full-time job. Yeah, and I've been here almost for about 2 years now. So Plan E Landscape Architects, they've got an office in Perth and they've got an office in Melbourne as well. And it's been a learning process, even being a landscape architect, picking up things on job and other stuff like that. Yeah, it's been good.
Okay, we might do a bit of a deeper dive into what you got out of the association when you were interacting with the other students and also the pathway. But I guess let's start now with a description maybe, or an insight into what a day looks like for you as a landscape architect.
Yeah, so there's a variety of things that I'm dealing with. Initially, when I started out, I was mainly dealing with concept packages, and that included using a whole lot of Photoshop, InDesign, and basics of AutoCAD. As I've started growing in my career, it's been the use of AutoCAD has been heavier. And so that includes documentation packages. So you initially start off with generating pretty pictures, conceptual diagrams, or even conceptual plans. But as you get into detailing, you start to realize what fine-tuning needs to go in, what sort of species selection needs to happen, and also if that is constructible within the cost that the client has provided.
And you chose landscape architecture as your career direction after graduating as an architect.
Yeah, that's right.
So
Yeah.
why did you make that decision? Why was that the right career path for you? How did you make that decision?
So it was a transition process where initially I did my architecture in India, and during the last year of my architecture degree, we had to get into thesis, and mine was sort of more related to the environment, to the space around. It was a wellness center, which was more like a resort slash spa experience. And while I was working through that, I did realize the importance of connecting the indoors to the outdoors. And also started to develop a deep sense of understanding of landforms, water, species, and stuff like that. And even during my internship, there was this transitioning happening where I did enjoy designing interior spaces, but I sort of like the threshold in between where you're connecting the interior to the exterior. And that's when I decided to sort of specialize in landscape architecture. Yeah, it's been good overall, but you sort of there is a part where you always look back and think about how architecture impacts and how landscape architecture impacts as well.
Okay, we said we were going to talk more about the student societies. So there are student societies on campus, but there's also student memberships of professional associations. Were you involved at all with your peak professional body, the student association associated with that?
So yes, I was involved with there's this landscape architecture association that's called ALA. And I was involved in that probably in my second year of landscape architecture, where I got to interact with people who were from different universities as well. We did organize a walk on country, which included professors from RMIT, professors from UniMelb, and students from both universities as well. And we actually came up with an article about that walk on country as well. It is still in process of publication,
Excellent.
but yes, that helped me develop relationships, not only with fellow students, but with people who have progressed well in their career, and getting perspective about how they think has been integral in understanding. And other than that, I'd like to talk about the solar organization, which has been good to connect with peers, but also it helps you understand what others are going through when you're in the same boat. It helps you organize events for other fellow landscape architecture students as well. But yeah, I'd say the connections that you develop there are super useful, and you never know where that might help you in the future.
Yeah, but you weren't relying on each other for, to help each other with to know whether grad applications were coming up or anything like that. It was really just knowledge of the landscape architecture industries.
Yes, that, and then we did have one where we were organizing like a career fair within the university. And so we had to reach out to different organizations. Yeah. So that's one way of looking at it. So when you're within the community, you get an opportunity to connect and almost forced to have that conversation with people in the industry. Whereas
Yeah.
if you're a bit timid, you might not go ahead and do that, which I would say was definitely the way for me. I wouldn't
Yeah.
have reached out to these organizations, to the companies by myself, but being in that situation helps you actually talk to them and also bring them in to talk to other students.
Yeah, so that art of networking super critical in
Yeah.
any industry, but especially in an industry I would imagine that's actually quite small in Australia. So 3,800 landscape architect roles in Australia. Architecture is obviously much larger with 19,300, but I imagine that it is a small industry. So networks is super important to you in the
Yes,
industry and relationship
definitely.
building.
Yeah, for sure.
How heavily did you have to rely on those networks when you were applying for your grad roles, or really was it just a formal application process that you went through?
It was partly a formal application process, but what I think helped push through the line was one of my a student within my class who is already working at Urban Edge, and she sort of put in a good word for me. So I did have to go through the formal process of giving an interview, um, talking to them about my portfolio, and all of that. And I'm sure they must have done that with a couple of other students as well. But I think what maybe the final push was through one of my friends who worked there already. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's such a great technique to be introduced to the employer prior to even applying. It's definitely a way to make your application stand out. Were there other ways that you were able to make your application stand out?
I'd say definitely focusing a lot on the portfolio, showcasing your skills within the portfolio of all the work that you've done up to date, be it a student, be it any internship that you've done along. That is definitely helpful. And since it's your own work, it's easier to explain and talk them through it, especially if it is the first meeting, and you're a bit nervous. You don't know what you're going to be talking about. So I think having that portfolio along definitely helps a lot. Also brings a starting point for a conversation.
Absolutely. Okay, so you saw the grad role that you first applied for advertised where? And is that a typical place for employees to advertise?
Yeah, so this one was on Seek.
On Seek, okay.
Yeah. So I'd seen that one come up. I'd say it is quite a common one, but more if you're looking at more specific grad roles or roles or a platform where roles are advertised for your particular interest, area of specialization, I'd say ALA job boards is one for landscape architects. And
Yes.
I'm sure there's something similar for architects as well,
Yeah.
where the body is putting out information or grad roles, potential opportunities.
Yeah. So for the Australian Institute of Architects, definitely they would have a job board. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd definitely look out for those. I'd say Seek and Indeed are one of the common ones where there's a possibility of something coming up.
Yeah, and it's quite easy to put an alert on so that you don't have to be looking at the job board every day. Set the alert up for any grad roles in architecture or landscape architecture, and you'll be notified via email as soon as something is posted. What did you ever, identify the organisations who you could potentially work for in Australia and start following their websites and watching for job adverts posted on their websites?
I used to do that as a student. I did that a lot before I got into Plan E. Um, I did look up Tract, which has really good work in landscape architecture. And so if you're looking at their website, you you have a point to talk about of projects that you're interested in, and you also know in which way the firm is moving towards, if they're picking up more of civil projects, if they're picking up more of park sites, of play areas. So, you kind of start to recognize areas of interest within that as well. Also, you get to know if you really want to work at that place or if you're
Yeah.
interested elsewhere.
Whether their projects are in line with what you want to work in. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
A lot of students would also jump onto the Ask Alumni networking platform that is run by University of Melbourne, and they would find alumni who are working in an organisation that they were interested in joining. And so just a call out to students that that's certainly available to you as well. To just connect with someone via the platform. It can just be online discussions that you have with the person you connect with. I think you were telling me, Priya, that you've had a few reach outs because you're a mentor in Ask Alumni, and those sessions have really just been online, but you've been able to answer the students' questions about careers in landscape architecture. But it's certainly a great way to actually talk to people working for employers that employment groups that you're interested in.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Okay, what are some other ways that students can develop experience that employers may be interested in during the graduate job application stage? So I believe it's an industry where there are lots of opportunities to do volunteer work might be one, but also you could actually freelance in your industry, couldn't you? Do students do that?
You could possibly. I've not had particular experience in freelancing, but I'd say internships are very useful. So if you find something that is even remotely related to your field of interest, be it architecture, landscape architecture, and you see, if you see, because I did one of those jobs, I helped as an intern with a residential landscape design firm. And so it was definitely a smaller area, more intimate design. But even then, that internship did sort of add on while getting the next role. So I'd say keep an eye out for internships in your area or areas that are even related. Those definitely help you in the future.
I know a lot of students would actually approach employers. They may not be advertising roles, but they would approach employers and just see what sort of opportunities for internships could be made available. Now that you're in the industry, do you see much of that happening? And is it easy for students to approach it that way?
I'd say it depends from firm to firm. If it is possibly a smaller firm, there are higher possibilities of you getting a foot into the door. Whereas with larger firms, I'm not entirely sure of how that works. Mine's like a mid-sized firm, and so I do know personally a friend of mine, a colleague of mine who's got a job just by knocking on the door and showing her portfolio. So I'd say, yeah, those do definitely work out.
And I'm just wondering, students at the moment will be going, yeah, but I don't have the confidence to do that. Because it puts pretty much everyone outside of their comfort zone to cold call an employer and try to present yourself as a potential for them to consider in the future. Do you have any recommendations for students on how they can develop the confidence?
I'd say first step would be sort of practice a pitch with one of your friends, which is the easiest way to start out. If you at least have a couple of lines prepared in your head about what you're going to speak to them, how you're going to approach them, and if you actually try that in person with one of your friends, you sort of get that you sort of get an idea of how you can go about that. I'd say if there's someone in the industry that is willing to even help you out in a practice interview, that would be a great opportunity to start.
Yeah.
And definitely the Ask Alumni is one way to get a mentor, have a conversation with them. You could possibly ask them to set up a practice
Absolutely.
interview.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's ways to build that sort of confidence, and it's always going to be out of your comfort zone. It's going to be different. So it's about taking that first step, which is going to help you.
Yeah. Now we probably have about 5 minutes left, so let's just see if we've got any student questions in the chat. So I think there is one there. Let me just. I'm having trouble actually seeing the chat. Okay, my name is Madeline. I hold a Bachelor of Architecture and currently first year student in Master of Urban Planning here in Melbourne. As someone who does cross major, how do you think I should build my portfolio that highlights both my backgrounds?
So to start off, I'd say you could put in projects that that's like your highlight project at the start, and that could be either urban planning or architecture, but that depends on which company that you're approaching. If you're approaching an architectural company, my advice would be put in your architecture projects at the start, because when you're looking at a portfolio, the first two projects definitely make a higher impact for the assessor. So yeah, if you want to look at a firm that that's into architecture, start with your architecture projects, but also to show that you've got more skills, you could put in your urban planning projects as well, but maybe put them towards the second half of your portfolio.
Now that is quite a specific question, and that may be something that Madeline would like to connect with you over the Ask Alumni or through the Ask Alumni platform to discuss in more detail. So Madeline, certainly feel free to do that. So Priya is one of our alum who is registered on that platform, and I think we've got about 300 graduates of Uni Melb in both landscape architecture and architecture who are basically sitting on the Ask Alumni platform waiting for students to reach out with questions. So it's just such a valuable tool for students. I can't emphasize that enough. And certainly one of my colleagues there has put the link in the chat for you to join the Ask Alumni program. No one sees your profile on Ask Alumni. It really is just private to you, and you use that as your way to then connect with or see other people's profiles if they're alumni, and you can reach out to those you choose to reach out to. Okay, any other questions then for Priya? Because we are almost out of time. We have got some other information to share with students. Maybe while we're waiting for students to put some more questions on, if there's one there. I'd like to know if there's anything you know about now about the industry that you wish you knew at the time you were applying for grad roles. So with your experience now of a few years out, a few years of experience in your industry, what do you look back on and say, I wish I knew that then? It would have helped me in my application process.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I'd say, yeah, more about communication with the people who are up there for taking an interview. It's important to understand that what they're looking for from a young alumni is like good energy. Definitely your skills, your portfolio, all of that matter. But what an employer is basically looking from a grad is good energy and good vibes for the office. Everything else you can learn on job, because there are people who are going to guide you. And so don't be daunted at the very first day that you need to know everything or you need to do everything perfectly. Yeah, I wish I knew that it's just easier to ask questions. And I've learned that through this process, that if there's anything that comes up, it's super easy to just ask questions around. Yeah.
Absolutely. You certainly don't have to know everything as an intern or a fresh grad, and you're not expected to. Okay, we only have 2 minutes to go, so let me share some more information with students about what is actually happening on campus at the moment. Now, this is going to take a little bit of time to change screens, I think. Sorry, to change slides. And apologies that Liam's been detained. He wasn't able to join us today. We've talked about questions. I'm just trying to change slides to the next page. We've talked about Ask Alumni. We've just got a screenshot there to show you that when you register on the platform, you will be able to see the profiles for Priya and Liam. So certainly still feel free to reach out to Liam to ask some questions about architecture. And what we're highlighting here is that at the top of the screen, you can actually use the filters to override the matching algorithm on the platform. So the matching algorithm suggesting to you the people who that the algorithm thinks is a good match. But certainly you can override that and look for, say, architects who are working for, I don't know, Cox Architecture, or any firm that maybe you're going for a graduate role with, and sort the alumni recommendations based on that. So please use the filters and get very specific with who you reach out to. Now, the other thing that will certainly help students develop their readiness for applying for grad roles are all the careers resources that are available to you at the University of Melbourne. This is where you can start the process. So there are so many resources. We've actually developed a checklist. This is going to help you understand where you're currently at in your career thinking, so your career readiness phase, and it will make 3 top suggestions of what you should do to move to that next level. So the chat hopefully has now got the URL for this, or just obviously use the QR code there to go onto the careers checklist and do a personal assessment. And the final thing to mention today before we sign off is that this event, where we've had a talk to our alum Priya today, and many other industry, many other opportunities to engage with industry representatives, so employers, will happen over the next 2 weeks through the Graduate Job Series. The highlight events for the Graduate Job Series are the 2 careers fairs. The All Degrees Careers Fair is on Tuesday next week, so please register via that QR code. And on Wednesday next week, we have the STEM Careers Fair. So it will be fantastic opportunity to go along and meet some employers and test out those communication skills and start meeting some people in the industry. It's a very, very important skill set, as we've heard from Priya today. So Priya, thank you so much for joining us today. We are at time, but we really appreciate you coming back and sharing your insights on transitioning into the workforce with our current students. And apologies that we couldn't bring Liam to you today, but you do have access to Liam through the Ask Alumni platform, so please look into that. So with that, I'll say thanks everyone for joining.
Thanks, Kim. Thanks
and
for
wish you
hosting this
all-
lovely seminar.
Yeah, thank you so much, Priya. Thanks everyone. Have a great
See you
afternoon.
guys.
See you at some other careers events.